And hopefully the others will arrive. If they do not have arrived, then we will not be able to call a vote. So therefore, we will just treat today as a hearing only if we do not get to that point. And I apologize to the two presenters that we don't have a quorum, but seems like everyone is being pulled away to other committees and being trapped in other committees that are still ongoing, and they're not able to get over here right now. So, but a couple of texted me and said they're on their way. So we'll go ahead and begin. I know that Senator Dixon, you had, for the sake of time, you've got to be in another committee, so I was going to let you go forward. So if you would like to come up to the table. And this is Senate Bill 449, and it's LC number 490780EC. Is that what you have?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, thank you. Please go ahead and present your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm bringing Senate Bill 449 in front of you today. It is being called the Parents' Bill of Rights. It's a transparency bill. And as a parent of 3 children in public school system and a believer in the beneficial impacts of public education, the governor and I believe the parents and the school system need to work together instead of against each other. It's time to reaffirm the right of parents to direct the education and upbringing of their children and have the support of the local school district in doing so. This bill was drafted with teachers, parents, and leaders in the education arena around the state and lays out the rights of every parent and the role of each school district must play in upholding these rights. This bill also codifies best practices for school districts while maintaining local control. This legislation ensures parents have the right to see material, curriculum, and other education-related items that their child is using or learning about. Too many times politics get in the way of a good education, but this bill that we can all support because no one can argue with parents' transparency in the school system. Parents' Bill of Rights is a transparency bill for parents and the way for school systems to know what is expected of them regarding access to these important stakeholders. When the parents are more involved in their students' or their children's education, it creates a more well-rounded education experience and enhances the academic process for each student. Also, teachers benefit from parent support in the classroom. The purpose of this bill is to strengthen the parents' rights. Currently, most of this is done by board rule, which can be easily undone. This would codify it in law, so it would not be undone. It also streamlines the process for parents to get the information that their children are being taught. Parents have the right to direct the education and upbringing of their children. Parents have the right to review instruction materials for the use in the classroom. Parents also have the right to consent in writing before a photograph or a videograph is taken of their child. The other parts of this bill gives the parents the right to request information from the superintendent or from the principal on material or concerns they may have. It will also codify this in law that the superintendent or the principal has 3 days to respond. If the principal or the superintendent is unable to do that within 3 days, they have up to 30 days to get this information and meet with the parent. If that is not done, then the parent can appeal to the State Board of Education. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Sir Parent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. I just have a few questions. So you said you spoke with teachers. Did you talk to them about, and sort of a wide cross-section I would think would be needed, on how they develop their lesson plans?
Yes. Yeah, that was discussed as well.
And
with the governor's office. This is a governor's bill, if I didn't mention that already.
Right. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm
You're
aware
welcome.
that it's a governor's bill, but I'm just worried about I would like more information on the sort of like practical mechanics of what's contained within the bill. Did you find that teachers were widely agreeable that it was reasonable to know all materials that they were going to be using that early in the year and within the time of this review period?
Yes, we were.
Because I've heard from one of my highly regarded school districts that they tend to engage in a lot of student-directed learning. So like if something within a lesson catches the eye of one of the kids and that child wants to pursue that further, under this, they really wouldn't be able to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Parent. I'm on.
You're on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Senator Parent. I first want to start with a quote from a teacher that we talked with in South Georgia. So this quote starts with, "We appreciate Governor Kemp and his team for leading and encouraging parental involvement. The students and their success is the why behind what we do each and every day. In order to see students reach their ultimate goals, it is vital that parents and teachers work together as a team. Parents who give their input, time, and dedication to their child's education create an investment that is valuable to all students." In terms of the review period and the materials that are available by this bill, it is just material that is approved by the State Board of Education and locally approved materials. So that supplementary material that changes from day to day, I'm a certified teacher, so I know that material changes from day to day, week to week. We did not put that in this bill because we knew you cannot mandate that by state law. Now, at the local level, that can be, decided on, what a teacher can have in their classroom, but most of the time, these supplementary materials are already, supporting the locally approved materials and the state board approved materials. And that was one of the changes working with school systems.
Okay,
that
so
we
the
made.
supplementary,
Yes.
all those things would not have to be
Nope.
ready at the beginning of the year or
Beyond-
reviewed.
Right. We, after talking with some of our advocacy groups, they said that, keep it just to primary materials because that is what can be looked at during that review period.
Thank you. I might have more later, but
Okay.
we'll give someone else a chance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, we had do. Okay, well, you're welcome to go ahead, Senator Parent.
Thank you. So this sort of question about the sort of 3-day produce the materials and then you can get an extension.
Yes.
I mean, I'm aware that obviously under some sort of FOIA processes, we have some similar things.
Yes, we chose the 3 days working with Ledge Council because that's more, and I've got legal here, but that's more in line with the open records request. We know that 3 days for some materials or some student records is just not feasible because you may not have personnel in the school system within those 3 days that can provide those materials. So that's why we chose to have the 30-day cushion.
And can you explain the process for getting it pushed to 30 days? Because doesn't it say 3 in there somewhere?
Yes.
It does say
so,
3, yeah.
So, yes. So they have to, it says in the bill they have to give the material within the 3 days, but if they can't produce those materials, they have to give a description of the materials and a timeline to the parent, and then the not getting the materials to the parent cannot exceed 30 days.
And you don't think that would be burdensome with all this paperwork within 3 days?
Well, since the materials that this bill requires us, the state board approved materials and the locally approved materials, that should already be easily accessed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Who's number 13? Sir James?
13 is the lucky number. Thank you, Senator Dixon. Has it been, I'm trying to understand the reason for this bill. Have there been other people who have had problems, and as a result, this bill is needed?
Yeah, currently, this is not in state law. It's board rule, which board rule can be undone or changed. This would just codify this in state law. And, whether there's examples currently or not, I mean, we feel there's a fundamental right of parents to have the right to view the material and the curriculum that their children are being taught.
Well, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator Halpern?
Good afternoon. Forgive me, I'm just getting in from a Health and Human Services Committee meeting that ran late, but I have one question for you, Senator. Do you have any concern, or do you share my concern that this legislation could actually be used to allow students to avoid kind of basic curriculum that's already been agreed upon and identified by the State Board of Ed, so, as a way to just get out of learning it? So I'll give an example. What if a parent, for example, objects to a student learning about the civil rights movement?
Do you want me to answer that? Okay.
Would this exempt them from having to actually?
So two parts of that. This bill does not get into divisive ideologies or obscene materials. This is just making sure the parent gets access and transparency to the materials. And the only course that this bill lays out that a parent can opt their student out of is sex education.
Got it.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is that new? I would have imagined that you could opt your child out of sex ed already.
So it's not in state law. So the only thing that parents have access to right now is student records and student data laid out in code. But it is, most districts should have this because that's best practice, right? But we want to codify it in law because law is not as easily undone as a board rule may be.
So right now, most, if not all, of this legislation is currently in board rule.
It is, so that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this. It is, parents' rights are over, a little bit in code, a little bit state board rule, and then a little bit local board rule. So one of the reasons we wanted to do this legislation is so we could codify and centralize it all in one spot for parents' rights and then the role of the school district.
But is there, if these rights already exist, are they being infringed on? What? Because sometimes you want the flexibility of not having something in code, because that is a much more, I agree with the other side of that corollary is also true, but unless there's some, burning issue, it strikes me that codifying a lot of stuff can be a big mistake.
I think I would respectfully disagree because parents' rights and transparency and access for parents for their students is the utmost important thing that we need to be focused on.
Okay,
And they should have that right to view the material and curriculum that their children are being taught.
All right, we have a few people signed up to speak to this. We have Cole Musio from Frontline Policy Alliance. I guess so. That's do we know?
We got a time limit.
Just just as quick as you can. We got a lot of people signed up. We got two bills.
Let me see if I can do 53 seconds. I'm Cole Musio, president of Frontline Policy Action. We support this bill. Thank you, Senator Dixon, and thank you to the governor for taking a lead on this. What I appreciate about this bill is it starts from recognizing the absolute rights of parents. There's not a meeting that I speak at around the state that goes by where I don't have some parent coming up to me and talking about an issue that they've had with their kid. Whether they've had a curriculum that they've tried to get a hold of, a piece of material they've been trying to get a hold of. And I had one lady at the last, one of the recent meetings I spoke at. It's been 5 months since the school district got back in touch with her. And so this is an important bill recognizing that parents' right to review, that critical piece of transparency. Parents have an absolute right, and that's what this bill says. What enumerates does not begin to cover an absolute right of a parent. But this is a great first step, provides increased transparency and access in education and in other areas of life. And we fully support this bill and ask for a favorable vote from the committee.
Thanks, sir.
Was that short enough for you? Thank you. I try to talk fast and keep it slow. All right,
Thank you. Next, we have Dr. Robin Hines.
Put it on the wrong bill, the wrong sheet.
It may very well have. So you're wanting to speak to the other bill?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Angela Palm.
Good afternoon. I'm Angela Palm with the Georgia School Boards Association, and we appreciate the governor's interest in transparency and combining a number of state laws that exist into one place for the parents to help. And we have been working with the governor's office on the bill. There are a few things that we think need changing or addressing. So I did want to share that with the committee and have already shared that with the governor's office. On lines 40 and 46, in reference to the local board of education, that's limiting this to those schools that are under a local board of education. And in line 25, there's a definition for governing body. So it would seem that would be the place that you would use governing body. Lines 80 do reference charter schools, but unless we put it in these other two places, then we're missing the charter community and the parents of those being included in this. So I would suggest that we add either just use governing body instead of local board of education, or add charter governing body in there too. One of the issues that we've raised, and that other people have too, in lines 61 and 62, and this shows up again later in line 111, it's the it's really opting in by a parent to allow their child to be photographed or recorded or voice recording. In many instances, I have no issue with that. My concern is with safety procedures. Many school buses have cameras on them. So does the parent have to opt in for their school, for the bus ride? And how do we handle that? There are other safety procedures in schools that also use cameras. So, and in addition to the safety issue is the number of schools and communities, the photographs. The student photographer going around taking pictures for the yearbook. Or if it's a high school with a student newspaper, there are legitimate reasons why somebody would be taking a photograph. And so it seems there should be some exemptions in place there regarding that, just to clarify so that we can get things done. The other issue that I would raise is regarding where Senator Parent was headed earlier on the sex education opt-out. And I really truly leave this part to administrators or teachers to address, but it seems to me to be problematic to opt out of a part of a course, because I don't know what if the part they want to opt out of is like half of that day's lesson. That just seems to be problematic. We already have in state law the ability of the parent to opt their child out of the entire course for sex ed. But that's kind of a minor point. My question is in lines 109 to 110 there, requiring advance notice to the parents of the content of that course so that they can decide whether or not they want to opt their child out. The bill earlier has a required review period for all materials. And so adding this language here, I'm not sure if we're adding an additional notice required for sex ed curriculum, or if the required review period would itself suffice for that advance notice. It seems by repeating it here that they want an additional notice to be given for this particular curriculum. But I think that needs to be clarified.
Okay.
So that's it.
Well, thank you. Oh, you have a question, ma'am?
Can you,
Senator.
and I just thank you for being here, and it's always good to see you.
Thank you.
Going back to lines the 61 through 63, and maybe this is also maybe just a question for Senator Dixon and Miranda. So I do know that, like, if I'm a parent, let's use a school bus example because that's a good example. There's a camera on the school bus. If I am a parent and I'm concerned that my kid's either been bullying or there was an activity or something with the school bus driver, typically what kind of triggers an event is parent call principal or whoever's at that school, and then there's a cascading effect to where I've seen within even minutes or even hours, you're obtaining that footage to see what happened in that situation, especially if there's an aspect of law enforcement or others that have to be brought into school resource officer or something. Is that kind of what you're like? Is this impeding that kind of cascading effect that we know happens in a school environment per se? unintentionally?
That's partially what I was getting at. Just in the normal course of events, a parent might not know that there are cameras on the bus. So, I mean, I have no issue with letting
Right.
parents know where cameras are, that there are cameras. Your child may be recorded if they're riding the bus, in the classroom if their safety system includes cameras that can be turned on.
Right.
But I think that needs to be considered before we absolutely say that we can only have an opt-in process by a parent before any of that can happen.
Okay.
Because whether it's the safety procedure or the other instance that I gave you, if it's just regular photographs that the students are taking or
Right.
teachers taking, or here we are at whatever event, are we saying that every parent has to opt in? Most schools today do an opt-out, and so the
Right.
parent can opt their child out of being photographed, although I would think there again we needed a safety exception. So,
Right. Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay.
Who's 13? Oh, was it Lucky 13? Okay.
Thank you very much. At the appropriate time, I'd like to move that we incorporate all of the changes that she's given us now
I
into possibly,
would wait and let the author of the bill come forward and see, let them.
and then we can make that
we-
motion.
And then we can discuss the motion.
Okay,
motion
because-
after for closing.
Because I thank you very much, and I looked at everything you suggested, and I agree totally that these are things that we must address before we could pass it.
Thank you, Senator James.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mike Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Mike Griffin. I'm Public Affairs Representative with Georgia Baptist Mission Board, and we want to say that we're here to support Senator Clint Dixon and the Parents' Bill of Rights. We appreciate what he's doing and the governor's effort on this. Three things just want to mention to you very quickly. 3 points in a poem, and then we'll do a love offering at the end. But no. Number one, we agree in principle. Definitely, because of this, it's a fundamental right, and we agree with that aspect of what is being demonstrated here. And so it's so very important. And then from a practical standpoint as well, and that is that there always be fair, transparent, and accountable procedures that are there for those parents to be able to fairly access what is going on. There should not be any fear within the school system of the parents being more involved. That should be actually something that would be very encouraging to the school system. And then thirdly, just the priority of it. Our children are number one. They're our most valuable asset, but they're also our most vulnerable asset as well. And so it always requires that extra effort. And we really appreciate the senator promoting this, and our legislature looking at making sure that this is even across the board of what we've been talking about today.
All right, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
You have no questions?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Good.
Next we have Allen, his last name? That's for the other bill. Okay, Stephanie Ally?
Ali, like the boxer.
I'm sorry?
It's Ali, like the boxer.
Okay, Ali.
There you go. Thank you, sir. And I'll make this short. Thank everyone. I know there's a lot of people for the next bill as well. My name is Stephanie Ali. I am the Policy Director for New Georgia Project Action Fund. And we want to state our opposition to this bill. It adds both time and administrative costs to teacher workloads, which are already stacked. These are underfunded positions in our schools and underappreciated, sadly. I myself am a mom of a child who will be going to public school in a few years, and I'm very excited to use the methods that those schools provide for me to take part in his education. PTA meetings, teacher one-on-ones, direct lines of communication with teachers and principals, and understandably, some will be better than others at that, but I think it is incumbent on us as parents to utilize those methods. I'm sure we've all had this happen when we work in environments where You know, you hear about something happening, you get all upset about it, and you start to work on pushing back against that, only to find out like you could have handled it directly by speaking to that person. And that's what I think is missing in this bill, is it just gives us immediate jump to all this administrative work, all of this work on the school, instead of utilizing the methods that exist. I'll additionally say, to follow up on what our previous speaker was saying, yes, as a parent, we are given options to sign our children away from photographs, to opt out of those systems. So these things already exist. We're seeing a lot of things right now that are preemptive bills to fix problems that aren't existing, when there are so many things we could be addressing with our schools, like fully funding them. And so we ask you to oppose this bill and instead put these great efforts that you all have into better forms of ways to address our public education. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Kameen Maddox.
Everything that I was going to say has been said, so.
I'm sorry?
Everything that I was going to say has been said.
Okay.
I can carry on.
Cicely. Okay.
Is she pro or was she in favor or?
I don't know. She was
Okay.
opposed.
Hello, thank you. My name is Cecily Harsh-Kanane from Public Education Matters Georgia Action Fund, and thank you for allowing me to speak. Again, as we are seeing over and over this legislative session, what we have here is a solution in search of a problem. Why is this legislation needed? Are parental rights in fact being usurped by schools? Are there currently laws that undercut the role of parents in decision-making regarding their children? The answer to these questions is an emphatic no. In fact, as has been discussed, there are numerous laws and regulations that guarantee these very rights. At its core, this is an attack on teachers and administrators. What this legislation says, without saying it directly outright, is that we don't trust the experts in the field and that parents had usurped their positions. Giving parents a fundamental right to direct the upbringing and education of their children raises the specter that schools will be forced to contend with a variety of parental demands on curriculum, discipline, teaching methods, and so on, and the related possibility of numerous lawsuits brought by disgruntled parents. Of course, school systems and school boards across the country and in the state of Georgia need to listen and do listen to parents. And then with the parents, make decisions that benefit all our children. But systems and boards cannot and should not be hamstrung in their ability to serve a broad population with differing needs. Again, this is a bill in search of a problem. When we have real problems that do exist in publication, that do need your attention, real problems related to years of chronic underfunding, teacher shortages, teacher retention, lack of mental health counselors, all the mental health issues our children are dealing with, lack of appropriate transportation funds, and so on. These issues do need y'all's attention. Please vote no on this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. We have no more questions, so Senator Dixon, would you like to come back up and offering a closing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I would like to make a statement on the Georgia School Board Association's comments. None of what they put forward fundamentally changes the bill, so we would be agreeable to working to clean up some of the language in the bill with them, but would request that we move this bill forward today and request your favorable consideration. Thank you.
You have number 7.
Yes, sir.
Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Dixon, I noticed in this bill we talked about charter schools and public schools. I see no mention of private schools. Is it your belief that we should have the rights of public school children should have the same rights in for the private school children also, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Would you have a problem with when we talk about a family or family bill of rights to include not only public schools but private schools also?
Would be happy to look at that as well.
Mm-hmm. Because it seems as if you're putting a different criteria on public schools and you don't have the same criteria on private schools. But that's a statement. That's not a question. Thank you.
You have no further questions. So what is the will of the committee?
Make a motion to pass.
I have a motion to pass from Senator Anavitarte. A second from Senator Dolzal. Any discussion?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment.
You have an amendment?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Page 3. Line 61 and 62. Delete F and the entire sentence, and then restructure G with F and so forth.
This Ledge Council, and you're getting this, do you understand what he's saying?
Yes, sir.
Delete line 61 and 6. Oh, man. You got a different bill.
Oh.
I'm working off LC 490780.
EC?
Yes, sir. EC. Okay, no, all right. Oh, no.
Okay, state your amendment again if you would, please.
Yes, sir. My amendment is on page 3, line 61, and, line beginning with line 61, ending on line 62. F in parentheses, delete the right to consent in writing before a photograph or video or voice recording of his or her minor child is made, and delete that entire sentence.
Okay, so you're making a motion to delete line 61 and 62.
Yes, sir.
And the "and" would go back to line 60
Correct, sir.
after the semicolon.
Correct, sir.
I have a motion to amend. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Senator Brass? What number are you?
12. I believe it doesn't have a number, but so my understanding is the author is amenable to the changes that were suggested. Should we not back up from any amendments, let Ledge Council make sure we get it right, and then come forward with those changes at the appropriate time?
Can I answer that, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I mean, yes. Go.
Well, Mr. Chairman, is it not true that the job of the Health and Education, of the Education Committee is to clean up legislation before it goes to rules?
That's a fair statement.
But we also have Ledge Council here for that reason, too.
But we also want to make sure that the changes we make are accomplishing what we're actually trying to change. And to me, when you strike through those two lines, I think you're actually fundamentally changing the attempt of what the bill author is trying to do.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Unless we table this bill today, we won't have a chance to go back and look at it and make sure that all our desires are met. So we probably need to let the Legislative Council have to change the time to go back and make the amendments and then come back before this committee. Because after it leaves this committee, we have little or no influence anymore. This committee, I mean.
All right. Ledge Council, would you like to speak to the amendments, what that exactly does within the context of this bill?
The amendment, as I understand it, yes, it would strike, excuse me, subparagraph F and just require a subparagraph redesignation. So the substance would be to take out the right to consent in writing before a photograph or video or voice recording of his or her minor child is made.
And then G would become F?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the amendment would be to insert the word "and" after the semicolon on line 60, to strike lines 61 and 62, and to redesignate subparagraph G as subparagraph F.
And question for Ledge Council, Mr. Chairman, if you'll allow.
Yes, sir.
So would that take away the parent's right to
You have to take the cameras out the buses.
not want their child to be photographed? Is that what we're doing when we strike that? I don't think that was the intent. The intent was, my understanding, I don't want to speak for the great senator from Savannah, but I think your intent's to make sure that security camera, we're not making it applicable to security cameras. So maybe I've got an amendment to the amendment.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Should this amendment pass, what happens with lines 111 and 112?
No, we have to take that out too.
I'll refer to Ledge Council.
If, Mr. Chair, if lines 11 and 12 were to remain in the bill, then under, starting at line 91 with subsection F, which requires each governing body to essentially develop policies and regulations, then the paragraphs starting at line 96 and going thereafter until we get to paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4, lines 111 and 112 are paragraph 4. So essentially, the local governing body would have to promulgate policies and procedures. One of those procedures would be what is contained in line 111 and 112. Procedures for a parent to consent to photographing or video or voice recording his or her minor child.
So then we would be covered. We're just giving them the freedom at the local level to come up with that however they want. So I'm good with that.
Local control. Local control.
Who's on 10? Oh, you just don't have a number in front of you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's not late in the session, and it occurs to me that with the author saying that he is willing to work with the School Boards Association and potentially others on these amendments, and, you know, given the senator from the second's correct comment that really the time to do that work is during the committee process, I would move that we hold off and table this bill so that these variety of changes can be made in an appropriate manner, as opposed to rushing it forward and sending flawed and incomplete legislation onto the Rules Committee.
Okay. Well, what we will do today, just because we are running over and I've got another bill to get to, so I'm just not going to take action if that'll suit you. We just won't take action on this bill, and I just ask you to get with those folks and we can work this, just get the language down, and then we can bring it back and then come back and get this through. But okay. I think the consensus on the committee is it's a good piece of legislation. We just want to make sure we get it right.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Next we have Senate Bill 435 by Senator Harbin, and this is LC. We're working off LC 490782. Is that the LC that you have, sir?
That is correct. 0782.
Yes, sir. You may go ahead and present your bill, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Today I'm presenting to you SB 435, Save Girls Sports Act, and we've LC 490782, which we had in place. You know, I've heard it said that God made man. Took one look, said I think I can do better than that, and he made woman, and there's not many of us men who would disagree with that in that respect. This bill, though, is about fairness. It simply is not to force biological girls to compete against biological boys, and it's certainly not fair to expect young women to endure the immense social pressure against them if they speak up for themselves. The Save Girls Sports Act requires all participants in student athletics within the Georgia education system to compete against their same biological genders. Students' biological gender will be determined by their birth certificate. It is our responsibility as legislators and as adults with common sense to resolve this issue and ensure that Georgia's young women aren't robbed of time on the field, a chance for character-building athletic accomplishments, and invaluable scholarship opportunities. Obviously, boys have certain biological advantages when it comes to sports that make it impossible to compete, for competition to be fair, if both genders are competing on the same game. I would give you, for instance, over 1,400 male athletes have run a mile in under 4 minutes. To date, no woman has yet accomplished this. Bench pressing for men right now is 497 pounds higher than that for women. Squat record, 730 pound differences between men and women. Forcing girls to play against biological males inhibits the ability of young women in the state of Georgia to win competitions, receive scholarships, and achieve the highest levels of success in their sport. Senate Bill 435 protects the level, provides a level playing field. This legislature states that public schools and private schools choosing to compete athletically against public schools must only allow biological females to compete in girls' sports. This will allow more young girls to achieve their dreams without worry that they may be competing against those who have an insurmountable genetic advantage. Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I want to do this. I have a video of just a testimony of what we're seeing around the country and why this bill is so important. It's about 2 minutes, if I will.
Okay.
Let's see, can we get this? Okay, thank you. Good work for you. There you go.
I've been training to be a championship sprinter since I was 8 years old. With the help of my parents, my coaches, and my teammates, I did it. By sophomore year of high school in 2018, I was one of the top 5 female high school sprinters in Connecticut. But then, one day, I wasn't. At the state championships that year, 2 people passed me, passed all of us girls, literally. They finished first and second in our races, dominating the field. Were they more motivated? Did they train harder? I don't think so. But they did have an edge, a big one we couldn't match. They were biological boys who said they were transgender girls. Do you think that's fair? Males competing against females? Before you make up your mind, let me tell you a bit about what it took for me to become a top female sprinter. It meant training with my team every day after school for at least 2 hours, working to shave fractions of a second off of my time in the 100 and 200 meter dash. It meant not hanging out after school or going out with friends on the weekends. It meant getting up early every Saturday morning and competing all day at a meet. It meant not indulging in any of the things that might cost me my dream. And here's the thing about the 2 biological males that took the top 2 girls' medals in the state of Connecticut. Their times were not even good enough to qualify them to compete in the state championships on the boys' team. Let me say that again in case you missed it. Their times were not good enough to qualify them for the boys' state championships. But 2 years in a row, they won first and second place competing against the girls. All in all, these 2 biological males won 15 women's state championship titles. Some in the media have accused me of being a sore loser. They tell me to run harder. But the biological changes that males go through during puberty are so significant, they gain an insurmountable advantage in strength and in speed. That's why boys always competed against boys and girls against girls. U.S. runner Allison Felix is an inspiration to me. She's the fastest female sprinter in the world. Her lifetime best for the 400 meters is 49.26 seconds. But based on 2018 data, nearly 300 high school boys in the U.S. alone could beat that record. What we are talking about then is not just boys taking women's trophies, though they are. And we aren't talking about biological boys taking women's athletic scholarships, though they'll do that too. When biological boys are allowed to compete against girls in sports like track, where the differences in performance are so great, we are talking about girls getting shut out, never getting the chance to win or even compete at all. When 2 biological boys took the first and second place spots against me in the 2019 Indoor State Championship, I lost the opportunity to participate at the New England Championships. I lost the chance to be scouted by top coaches, possibly even to win scholarships. Right now, biological boys are being allowed to set records on the girls' team, deleting girls' records, erasing the achievements of actual girls, and setting a standard probably no girl can meet, no matter how much she trains or how hard she tries. The reason that we have girls' sports in the first place is to give female athletes with talent, hard work, and dedication an equal opportunity to shine and be recognized. But girls will never have that opportunity if they are forced to compete with biological boys in sports like track and field, softball, volleyball, or basketball. Women fought too hard for too long so girls like me can have the opportunity to compete on a level playing field. Maybe worst of all, when girls try to object, when we point out the truth that biological differences in strength and speed between boys and girls are massive and real, we're called bigots. Administrators, teachers, coaches, and other students tell us to just keep quiet and take it. We are told a girl's place is to be seen and not heard. Well, we won't be silenced. We are fighting back. With 2 other top female runners in Connecticut, I have filed a federal lawsuit under Title IX to protect the rights of women and girls to a fair competition on a level playing field. Please don't turn your backs on us, America. This isn't about gender identity. It's about fair play. I'm Selena Soul for Prager University.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to present both the bill and to present the testimony that's here from this young lady. Being the father of 4 boys and 2 girls, I can tell you there's a lot of difference between the 2 of them. My wife would give testimony to that, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Before we open the questions, I did have one question. Is this the same bill that we passed before, or is it? Or
There's some slight modifications that have been made there.
Okay.
As we worked, yes, sir.
Okay. And you have question, who's number 10? Senator Parent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Harbin. Let me ask you, what would you say is the purpose of youth sports?
To develop character, talent, and also competition with one another, because the world is a competitive place.
So I noticed that you did not list winning or always finishing in first place among the most important, attributes of youth sports. Is that correct?
I believe there needs to be fairness. I don't believe it's, I played, and where I'm playing with someone that's 4 to 5 years older than I am in high school, and I can promise you even age has a difference in the competitiveness, but also whether it's male or female, there's a great deal of strength differences that are there and speed differences that make a difference.
Well, that raises an interesting point. Would you say it's unfair for high school freshman boys to compete against high school senior boys?
If they can make it, I have actually seen that done before, where age, they were able to overcome that, but that's not the norm.
Right, but then getting into this fairness thing, how would that be fair? I think maybe what I'm getting at is, wouldn't you agree that there is no way to make sports 100% fair because everyone is different, I was good at some sports and not others. I was strong in some sports and not others. There are women I had a girl on my crew team who was 6 feet tall. I could be like, well, that's not fair. What would you say to that?
I think when you see 1,400 men run the mile in under 4 minutes, and no female ever to do that, it says that there is a difference in that area.
Can I ask 2 more, Mr. Chairman?
I've got other questions.
Yeah, okay. So hopefully you don't have to come back to me. So Senator Harbin, are you aware that neither the International Olympic Committee nor the NCAA nor actually a number of other elite sports organizations have banned transgender athletes? Are you aware of that?
I'm aware that in 10 states, we have seen states moving in that area already, because they see it, especially in the high school areas that are there, and the issues that are affecting young ladies and young men, but especially the young ladies.
Well, but if at the elite level, where wouldn't you concede winning is actually more important than in youth sports, if they have very nuanced, inclusive policies at the Olympic level, why would we start at the youth level where the things that you already mentioned, such as developing character, learning to be on a team, are really the foundations of youth sport? Why would we be like, oh, you can compete in the Olympics under these as a transgender athlete, but not at, Druid Hills High School in DeKalb County, Georgia?
We have seen this in, not seen this in professional sports. If you look at men's basketball, we've not seen women there. But I'm just saying this is that for our children, this is a fair issue that they are able to have the opportunity. You look at what women have even done at the college level in Title IX, that they fought for years to have that right. I think that's the part that we're looking at here.
Thank you.
Senator Jackson.
Chairman Harbin.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, sir?
Jackson.
Hey, man, I appreciate the opportunity that you're going to answer a couple of questions for me. First of all, is there any instances in Georgia of this happening here?
I have only some emails from people when I started this last year of where there was a boy on a team where the daughter said, I do not want to play with him because of the size difference. I have not seen one in that area, but we have seen it in other states that it's already started. So I've seen that more than anything else, but I've had emails from 2 different constituents that said, here's what happened in our case.
Okay. Follow-ups question, Senator Harbin. Can you define transgender athlete so that we're clear of what a transgender athlete is?
I would rather define what is a biological boy and a biological girl. And I go back to what the bill says. It is what they were at the time of birth, where they had a birth certificate. That's how I would define it.
Okay. All right. With that said, Mr. Chairman Harbin, what entity will be the genitalia police? Will it be a teacher? Will it be a coach? Who's gonna make sure the person is that person?
Well, if you look at the bill in line 45 and 46, if a grievance is filed with a complaint, there is an employee that is defined in subsection G, which is part of OCG 20-2-5, -315, in which they are assigned to make decisions, and so that person would be called upon by the grievance to investigate. And at that point in time, as I see the bill, as it would address what does the birth certificate say, is how this bill that person would make that decision.
Okay. So follow, Mr. Chairman.
Real quick.
So if it comes to the grievance committee, which will be a local a local decision, it will go. You bring your birth certificate, and your birth certificate will be descriptive of who that person is.
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Number 12.
Yeah, I want to back up to Senator Parent's comment on 9th grade versus a senior. I mean, we do have, most sports have a junior varsity or even a 9th grade team in some cases, and it's for that very reason that I think the point you were trying to make, or the point that you did make a good point, but we do have we do have JV teams, and we do have 9th grade teams for most sports. I do have one little concern, though. You know, the title of the bill is to save girls' sports, but if we go into lines 39 through 43, here we're not allowing females to play male sports, but I thought the argument was that males have a competitive advantage. I mean, in my home county, we had a female played football, and she went on and played at Jack State and played college football. And I do know that you've got it covered here that says unless there is not an equivalent interscholastic or intramural athletic program for females. But now you're seeing flag football in high school. So would that count as an equivalent? So would our kicker that played at East Coweta that went on to play college male football, would she not be able to play football? because of that. Would that flag football be considered equivalent? Is one question, and then a kind of a follow up. And you can probably answer all this at once, but we also had another female growing up. In fact, a friend of mine's sister. She was and no pun intended, but she was way above par golfer. She was a fantastic golfer, better than all the guys.
Better than you, sir.
Better than me. She went on and was actually leading the U.S. Women's Open later on after high school.
Who was she playing with, sir?
Well, she played at Noonan High School, and she played on the female team, and she played on the male team, and she did that, but to get better because she was playing up. And you look, we do it across sports all the time. You let your kids play up if they're better than the competition. So I can understand where you're trying to go with the rest of the bill of not letting essentially play down. But I don't want to prevent growth in sports by preventing a female if she wants to quote unquote play up. I wouldn't want to prevent that from happening. And so again, I see what you did there in lines 43 or 42 and 43. That it says unless there's not an equivalent interscholastic or intramural athletic program for females, but in the case of Jean Reynolds playing golf, she would have had to play against females, which would have been fine, but she would have crushed them all, and she wouldn't have gotten better. And again, she was trying to play up. So that's my only concern of your bill.
Right. But she also played, as you were saying, when she played professional golf, she played in the ladies' tournament.
She played in the ladies, correct.
So I think that's the part here is not to keep them from not being able to go up if they can. I think this is opening that door and still leaving a door open. It's closing one door where it's against, but this gives them the opportunity to move up.
Well, follow up, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. Actually, what you are preventing, you would have prevented Jean Reynolds from playing on the male team. You would have maybe it would have been arguable, but we would have potentially prevented Ashley Martin from kicking on the East Coweta High School football team. And so that's my concerns. If we're going to say that males are, I don't think anybody's actually said this, but if we're going to say they're superior athletes or their bodies are built different and they're stronger and can be faster, if we're going to say that, and I get that preventing them from playing down, but when preventing a female from playing up, I think we're kind of going against what you're actually trying to accomplish is my concern.
Right. And I think this is, as we've talked to the governor's office even as well, it was also for protection in Title IX issues, is try to have as much protection for Title IX as well as they're moving upward.
Okay.
All right, Senator Albers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Harbin, just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. In nowhere in this bill does it judge someone, and nowhere in this bill does it ban someone. It simply just says that everybody can compete. They just compete at the gender which they were born, and everybody can play in any sport as long as they qualify for the team. Is that not accurate?
That's how I would understand it, sir.
Thank you.
Help.
I would allow, let me back up. I think the question that we're grappling with here really, frankly, is a generational one. So in my parents' generation, right, the question was, could I marry somebody of a different race? In my generation, the question was more, do I like boys or do I like girls, right? It wasn't based on race. In this generation, the question really is, who am I? And it's different. And a lot of times we might misunderstand that or don't understand that because that's not our reality. I've got a family member myself who is non-binary. I don't pretend to fully understand that, but I respect that. And my question for you on this bill, it really is, I'm not going to argue with you that males, kind of physiologically are stronger than females. I think that's true. And I also, though, am not going to argue that we see trans students considering suicide at substantial rates greater than we see other students. And I don't want to make this a zero-sum game where we're choosing between those two odds, which is what this bill does. I wonder if, to the point you just made, Senator Brass, is there room to say that, in fact, we need to expand how we're thinking about sports generally? Is there room to say that potentially we should leave it to local schools and decide if, in fact, they can create other kinds of teams that would be in violation of this law as it's written, that allow whatever sexes to play with whatever other sexes, it doesn't matter, right? And that there are children who would choose that, the kind of, if we build it, it will come. They will come. Ultimate Frisbee, I think, is another example. You mentioned flag football. I think Ultimate Frisbee is another example of a sport in which it doesn't matter necessarily. And so my question is there room at all to consider that the state should not be legislating what every single school does with their athletics across this state, and instead allow for a growth in our understanding about what we're evolving toward, and two, and a recognition of the people who want to engage in team sports, character building, like you said, that cooperative teamwork effort, and allow those children to also be able to participate.
I think if you listen to the testimony that was given, you realize that there are people who have worked extremely, extremely hard. They've dedicated themselves in every way they could, and yet that door was shut. And I believe that we, as a legislature, need to deal with this issue at one level so that this is not a multifaceted issue across our entire state, district by district, school district by school district. I think that creates even more of an issue. And I believe that we need to recognize and follow that there is a difference, and we're trying to open opportunities for young ladies to be able to compete in their sport without being adversely selected against from a standpoint of who they have to play with.
Just a follow-up, if I may.
Yes.
And I recognize that. I'm actually not saying anything against the video that we just saw. What I'm asking is there an opportunity to say to a local school board or school that wants to start a program that isn't male this or female that, but just is, because it doesn't seem like this bill would allow them to do that, because it really then is saying, right, that there's a designation, and that once there is that designation, that's the place you got to go. That's the box you got to live in.
But nothing would prevent a school from having co-ed sports, and in that case, it would work. From that standpoint, so there's nothing to prevent that there could be co-ed in that respect, and there would be no problem there.
Did you have?
I think
Senator
Barbara
Dozell.
just underscored what I was going to confirm based on the question that Senator Halpern had, and that is that this legislation, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, would not prevent any district from doing exactly what she described. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Seeing no more questions, we do have some sign up. And we are already over on time, and I took a little liberty to go over because we started late because we were waiting on members to get here. We have, about 15 people signed up to speak to this bill. I'm going to let you speak to the bill, but I'm going to ask you to keep it in less than 1 minute because we don't have time for speeches, and we plan to take action on this bill today. So first we will call Terry Stalker. Terry Stalker. Jeff Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Jeff Graham. I'm the Executive Director at Georgia Equality. We stand in opposition to Senate Bill 435 due to a number of the reasons that have been addressed today by specifically Senators Parent, Senator Jackson, Senator Halpern. The reality is that kids in Georgia all want the same thing: to play with their friends, to get a good education, be happy and healthy. All kids, including transgender kids, deserve the opportunity to participate in sports that help them stay active and learn about teamwork, discipline, and sportsmanship. This attempt to ban transgender kids from playing sports just because of who they are will put all of our kids in boxes based on their genders, races, and backgrounds, and lead to bullying of kids who don't conform to stereotypes. In the report Fair Play that we gave to this
Sir,
committee last year,
I understand you got a whole long page, and I can see you're I'm asking you to keep this quick and concise, please.
Yes, sir. I'm trying to condense it just as quickly as possible. This bill does not address transgender girls who never go through male puberty and never achieve the genetic advantage that the author claims. Contrary to its intent, this bill would actually harm cisgender girls and intersex children. According to the Intersex Society of North America, approximately 1 in 1,500 children are born with ambiguous sex characteristics. This is a very private medical condition that would have to be disclosed if a complaint is made. A complaint could also be made against girls that don't match gender stereotypes, calling into question the gender of young women who is tall, broad shoulders, or has dark hair, participating in women's sports. Thank you. Last I would like to leave is an editorial from Minky Warden of Human Rights Watch concerning FIFA, the World Cup bidding process, and how this passage of this legislation may impact that. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, next, Jen Slipikoff. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that.
I feel like I'm having a little bit of deja vu today. I was here about a year ago in the same building, in front of the same committee, opposing similar legislation. Got to see the same video. My daughter is entering her 3rd season of playing lacrosse for her middle school team. If you haven't already guessed, I am the mom of a transgender student athlete. Playing lacrosse, she has learned the value of being part of a team. She's learned respect for her teammates and coaches. She's learned the rewards of hard work. This body seeks to take that away from her because of misconceptions about what kids like her experience. It's not dangerous for my daughter to be on the same sports team as her girlfriends. As I mentioned, she's been on this team for 3 years. There have been no protests from her teammates, from their parents, or from opposing teams. My daughter hasn't injured anyone. She hasn't taken anyone else's spot on the team. She hasn't taken away a scholarship opportunity. In fact, her teammates are some of her very best friends. Her coaches are kind and supportive and believe she is a valued member of their team and that she belongs. She's not a threat.
I'm gonna have to ask you to. Like
if
you
this
said,
bill passes,
we've all done this last
what
year.
advice can you give me on how I have this discussion with her? I'm sorry, you can't play lacrosse anymore because some legislators down at the Capitol who have never met you, who have never seen you play, don't think you should. How do I tell her that instead of spending time with her friends, playing a game that she loves, that she'll be relegated to having to watch them on the sidelines? This bill is called Save Girls Sports, but how do I save my daughter?
All right,
I have written testimony here. I don't know who I should give this to.
All right, next we have Cole Musio from Frontline Policy.
I'll hurry since we learned that Senator Brass needs to work on his golf game. SB 435, 3 things that it is not. 1, it's not something that keeps people from participating. Everybody can participate, club sports, co-ed sports, and in alignment with their biology. Number 2, it's not unique to Georgia. More than 10 states have passed similar legislation. The majority of Southeastern Conference states have passed similar legislation, and we need to do it here as well. It's not a solution to a problem. We have seen testimony from other states today. We're seeing it around the country, and we're seeing it here in Georgia. We do have cases in Georgia, and it is something that continues to be an issue. 3 things it does: it recognizes the science, as was talked about earlier today. It recognizes a woman's ability to participate, be able to be on the team, recognizes the gains that we've made in Title IX. And number 3, it protects the ability to win, to compete, and earn scholarships. And so I encourage the committee to pass this bill today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go with Jen. Oh, right, I'm sorry. We're ahead. Terrence Wilson.
Greetings, Chairman Payne and members of the committee. My name is Terrence Wilson. I am the Regional Policy and Community Engagement Director for the Intercultural Development Research Association. We're an education nonprofit focusing on equitable outcomes for all students. We are opposed to this bill for a few main reasons. One, we believe that it's going to make schools unsafe for our LGBT, particularly our trans and non-binary students. In 2019, more than 2 in 3 LGBTQ students in Georgia reported experiencing at least one form of anti-LGBT discrimination incident at school in the past year. And these policies have real life or death consequences for students, as tragically 42% of LGBTQ youth consider attempting suicide, including more than half of transgender and non-binary youth. So the impact on transgender and non-binary youth is evident, but I also want to mention that this bill likely violates federal protections against based on discrimination on the basis of sex. We believe that, as you all are aware, Title IX prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in any education programs that receive federal funding. In Bostock versus Clayton County, the U.S. Supreme Court made clear that discrimination based on sex includes protections based on gender identity and sexual orientation. Just last year, the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights issued a notice of interpretation explaining that it will enforce Title IX's prohibition on discrimination on the basis of sex, consistent with Bostock, to include 1, discrimination based on sexual orientation, and 2, discrimination based on gender identity. In Idaho law, like the ones we've heard a lot about the other states that have done this, in Idaho, a law similar to this bill was challenged in court and it was halted before it could take effect. The passage of this bill will likely lead to costly litigation, invite scrutiny by the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, and will ultimately probably be determined to violate federal law.
All right, thank you, sir. Brentley Hudgens.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bentley Hudgens. I've been in this room quite a few times this week, but hi. I'm a non-binary candidate for Georgia's House District 90. When elected, I will be the first person to ever be non-binary to hold state office. This bill is so incorrect. If you look at its there's a lot of talk about science, there's a lot of talk about biology, there's a lot of talk about truth, but in the bill itself, it misdefines gender. Gender is not sex. Sex is your biological composition. Gender is a social construct. So it is based off of a fallacy. 2, it is not just Democrats and progressives that have transgender kids. Republicans have transgender kids too. Conservatives have transgender kids too. I was one of them. Would you do this to your own children? Would you enable adults to question their genitalia? Would you enable people to invade their right to privacy over an adult issue? Look, this bill does nothing but endanger the lives of LGBTQ youth. It puts cisgender kids at heightened scrutiny because of an adult's anxiety. We do not have enough room in our classrooms for adults who have no business knowing what is the privacy and the right to a child's life. I'll end with this because I know I'm running up on my time. Transgender kids and queer youth are killing themselves because of bills like this. I almost did. How many more bodies have to be put in the ground? How many more funerals do I have to go to? How many more friends do I have to lose before you start to take your job seriously and actually do things that helps kids? Vote no on this bill and move forward with good legislation that actually helps our children.
All right, thank you. Mike Griffin.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Georgia Baptists, as you know, represent approximately 1.3 million Georgians, 3,500 churches. And last year at the Georgia Baptist Convention, we passed a resolution entitled Protecting Girls' Sports. And a couple of perspectives that we agree with in supporting Senator Harbin on this bill. One is a common sense perspective. It just makes sense that biological males should compete in sporting events against biological males, and biological females should compete in sporting events against biological females. Just the very nature of the two and who they are at birth puts them naturally into one of two gender categories. Secondly, just a fairness perspective. It simply is not fair for girls to be forced to compete against those that they physically are not equal to. It is a fact that men naturally have greater muscle mass, bone density, higher lung capacity, larger hearts than women. It's also not fair that girls be discriminated against by being denied college scholarships, recognition for holding sporting event records, because biological males are allowed to compete against them. So we would just simply say this is good common sense legislation, and we appreciate the committee's favorable support of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Chris Hugo, or is L Hugo? Did I get that?
Close.
Yes, sir.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Lugo, Executive Director of the Out Georgia Business Alliance, Georgia's only chamber of commerce serving the LGBTQ+ community. We oppose this bill. Georgia's leading corporations are growing their commitments to LGBTQ+ inclusion as a key business strategy that also extends to the families and communities they employ and serve. Not only would this bill be dangerous to have a dangerous impact on young transgender Georgians, their families, their peers, and school sports programs, this legislation will have extremely damaging long-term effects on workforce development and our economy. In addition to some of the perspectives presented today, it's no secret that attracting and retaining top-tier talent and their families is mission critical to fueling Georgia's pro-business environment and our economy. When LGBTQ+ people don't feel welcome at work, they're less likely to stay. And employee turnover is a drag on our state economy. It can cost almost $10,000 to replace an employee, over $200,000 to replace a senior executive. For trans students who could become our state's next CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, leaders, and employers, participation in school athletic programs is critical to developing the skills and experiences to keep that talent right here in Georgia. We should prioritize policies that keep our state welcome to all, including to top-tier workforce talent, parents and their kids, the future trans leaders who will invest to make Georgia even better if they are intentionally welcome, protected, and developed. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Alex Ames.
Hello, my name is Alex Ames. I'm a college student now, but I was a high school athlete. I identified as a female, and I competed in swim and in cross-country competitions all the way to the state level. I just came over from the committee upstairs, and I thought it was interesting coming over from a place where we had really in-depth discussions about how discrimination impacting children is wrong. Children should be at the front. All children, no matter their identities, should feel safe at school, not feel attacked. And this bill does exactly the opposite. Back in 1961 on UGA's campus, there were white students who would wave Confederate flags and claim that they were the victims because of integration, that they shouldn't be forced by any government to let other people onto their campus. I think people in 40 or 50 years will look back on this bill and think similarly, just like I think in disgust about those people waving those Confederate flags, discriminating against other young people in Georgia because of their differences, biological differences, but also the differences of how they identify, how they grew up, people they may have disagreed with, but people who they fundamentally didn't believe had humanity. I think in the future we will look back on this bill and see the same thing, that this bill killed people, that this bill was discriminatory, and passing it was a major mistake, a hateful mistake. So as a female student athlete and as a Georgian, I call you to not pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Julian Fortuna. Please, be quick.
Of course.
Hello, Senators. My name is Julian Fortuna. I'm a student at the University of Georgia, and I have a sister who goes to high school here in Atlanta. I've grown up in Georgia schools all my life. My sister and I are products of Georgia schools, and I've grown up alongside transgender classmates. As a Georgia student, I urge y'all not to pass this harmful piece of legislation, which singles out the most vulnerable children in the state for discrimination and even more hate than they already face. Now, I can speak to my own experience as a Georgia student and that of my friends and how overwhelmingly students don't want hate in schools. But I know that we haven't been, and basically you don't have to take it from me. I know that we haven't been presented any data about the scale of transgender sports participation here in Georgia, but let's look at what data we do have, right? A study from the American Society of Pediatrics shows that more than half of transgender male teens and 30% of transgender women teens have contemplated suicide. 80% of trans teens in Georgia have reported harassment. 1 in 10 have been physically assaulted because of their gender. Hatred and discrimination already rob transgender students of so much that they as children should have access to, support from their peers, families, and their ability to live a normal life. Now they'll have to contend with state-mandated discrimination that singles them out from on high as a permanent other amongst their peers. This bill mandates division between students and will force taxpayers and schools to foot the bill. This bill will divide students and inject hate into our sports programs. As one speaker already said, this bill is, quote, not a solution to a problem,
Sir,
but rather it's a
one
one-size-fits-all mandate with potentially life or death consequences for students across our state. Please do not pass this bill.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. James Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the committee for hearing me. I'm James Wilson. I'm a 19-year-old student at Georgia State University. And I came to say that trans people now are not, for me, some distant idea. They're my peers. They're my friends. I go to school with them. I work with them. I take them to the varsity and show them what fine dining is. And I wouldn't be able to do any of that anymore after today without coming here and saying that this bill is wrong. I'm against it. They're against it. They know about it, and they don't like it. This is wrong. It's a discriminatory bill, and I hope y'all don't pass it. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Steve Smith. Nakina. I pronounce that.
Is it NECA? N-N-E-K-A?
Yes. Yes. I'm sorry about that.
Good afternoon. My name is Neka Ewolanu. My pronouns are they, them, and I am a staff attorney with the ACLU of Georgia. Our affiliate opposes SB 435 because transgender students are first and foremost students. Bills like SB 435 deprive a subset of students the opportunities afforded to their peers and sends an exclusionary message to vulnerable trans youth. Rather than promoting fairness in sports, this bill harms students of any gender identity. By allowing any other student to allege a violation of these provisions, cisgender students, especially girls of color who are already frequently deemed too masculine by society, will find themselves facing complaints. Intersex children may find themselves unable to join any sports team and comply with this bill. And trans students who already face significantly higher rates of physical and sexual assault will be subjected to bigotry, humiliation, and ostracization. SB 435 also violates the civil and constitutional rights of transgender students. When a law singles out people based on the fact that they have a gender identity that does not match the sex assigned to them at birth, it necessarily discriminates on the basis of sex, thus triggering heightened equal protection scrutiny under the Constitution. Courts across the country have found that anti-transgender bans violate Title IX, and the Biden administration has made clear their intention to enforce Title IX consistent with the Supreme Court's holding in Bostock. All Georgia students just want to live their lives without intrusion from our state legislature. Transgender students deserve the same chance to succeed and thrive like any other student. For these reasons, the ACLU of Georgia opposes this bill.
All right, thank you. Coco, you have to tell us your last name. I missed the writing. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if that was a Y or a G on the end.
It's quite all right, Chairman. It's Pappy. Good afternoon. My name's Coco Pappy. I'm the Director of Public Policy at Deep Center, based in Savannah, Georgia, the good Senator Jackson's district. We're here today to oppose this bill. Frankly, it's a non-issue to parents, especially the parents we work with. A Morris poll finds that the majority of people, both Republican and Democrat, oppose these proposed laws. 28% of adults, both Republicans and Democrats, said they support these, as opposed to the 67% who oppose such bills. Furthermore, the bill language as written in this current bill amounts to the same form of sex discrimination that has long been prohibited under Title IX, a law that protects all students, including trans students. Knowing this, it would be prudent for us to look at states that have chosen to pass these types of laws: Florida, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee. All of them are currently facing multiple lawsuits, and all of them will see court challenges. Court challenges cost the state money, which costs taxpayers. There are far too many issues pressing young people and their parents right now. This is not one of them. We absolutely oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Camden Hughes.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Camden Hughes. I am a women's Premier League rugby player, which is basically unpaid pro. I grew up a swimmer, and I began playing rugby my freshman year. If any of you guys have ever seen rugby played, you know how physical it is and uncomfortable it looks and can be, considering that physicality. However, playing with a transgender teammate has never contributed to that discomfort. I currently play with 2 transgender athletes, both of which are amazing players and incredibly hardworking team members with so much athletic integrity. None of my teammates feel uncomfortable playing with transgender teammates. In fact, they enjoy being part of a diverse learning community and family. Taking away the opportunities of these transgender teammates would be taking away members of our team, who is our family. This is not a bill that helps athletes. And for the record, transgender athletes have never been a threat to me, but maybe that's just because I'm good at what I do. So.
All right, now we have Robert is the one that I called earlier that was on the other list.
Me.
Yes, sir.
I will be brief. I'll start out with, my concerns with the way that the bill was written from its intent and that sort of thing. Senator Brass covered those. There's, according to what the intent is, we do have different sports that are just for girls and just for boys, and of those are volleyball, softball, gymnastics, girls flag football, which is not the same as 11-man tackle football. So, that being said, I'm the executive director of the Georgia High School Association, which is a private voluntary organization of 460 schools, and they govern sports and fine arts within the state of Georgia. And that governance is set by a representative body much like you guys. It's almost exactly like you guys as we move forward. But I say that just to say, if there's any information regarding the bill or data or anything that I can help you with, please reach out. But other than what Senator Brass said, I have nothing on the bill.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks, sir. And last we have Leo Allen.
Mr. Chairman, can we ask a question? Last speaker, just a quick.
Yes, you got.
Do you support this bill or not? I didn't catch you.
The Georgia High School Association does not want to discriminate against anyone, including girls.
So.
And currently, what our rule is we accept the gender determination of the local school district. That's what we currently do.
Do you support passage of this bill? Can you answer that?
Well, I believe that there are biological differences in male and females, and I think that we strive all the time for competitive balance. And some practical concerns that I would have dealing with this is we don't have boys volleyball, and if we had biological males that want to play volleyball and don't think that it won't happen, it will happen. There are some differences there. in our opinion.
Senator Jackson.
So, sir, what you were saying is you believe in local control.
What I said is currently the policy is that local districts determine, the association accepts the gender determination of the local school district.
Okay. Okay. So if the local school district, I'm sorry, follow question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
So if the local school districts submit that these students are played in their districts and they're eligible to play at a different level, you accept their recommendation?
If they live in that zone and they're academically eligible and if made legal moves and that sort of thing, they do. We don't currently involve ourselves in that.
Thank you, sir.
Senator James, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to thank everyone who has given testimonies, because even though from the beginning I was against it, because I was not a professional athlete, but I played tennis and the martial arts, and I competed with men, but not in the legal competitions, only because I was a woman. But I wouldn't have all the trophies that I have now in those sports had this bill been something that they had in high school when I was there. So I would, so I liked all the testimonies.
Right,
thank you so much.
All right, thank you, sir.
If I could just say one more thing, this is the 50th celebration of Title IX. I just wanted to throw that in there. We're celebrating it all year long.
All right, now, Alan, I'm sorry, had to step aside.
Good afternoon. My name is Leo Shage Allen, and I'm the Minister of Faith and Justice at Virginia Highland Church in Virginia Highlands. And I'm also clergy with the United Church of Christ, representing 750,000 people in the United States alone. I am transgender, and I'm a Christian, and I am a person of high moral integrity. I believe that every person, every young person, every adult is made in the image of God, but that this bill spits in God's image. This bill violates the Constitution and federal civil rights law, which has been alluded to solve a problem that does not exist. And the Constitution and federal law aren't just legal documents, they are moral compasses. It does not make sense to me that as proponents of small government, there are individuals attempting to bypass this law, the federal law, and restrict certain inalienable rights simply for political gain. I personally have faced discrimination in school settings as an adult for being transgender. Out of fear of retaliation, no one came to my defense, and I had to advocate for myself, why I was part of the school's community and why I belonged as much as anyone else. As elected officials, I believe you are advocates for transgender youth who cannot speak up for themselves as I could as an adult. They need their right to a full and well-rounded education, including sports, to be protected by you. Not because they are transgender, but because they are human beings made in the image of God. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus says, "Let the little children come to me. Do not forbid them, for such is the kingdom of God. Truly I say to you," Jesus says, "if you do not enter the kingdom of God as one of these, you will not enter." Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Have any further discussion from the committee? What is the will of the committee on Senate Bill? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Senator Harbin. You want to come back up and? Okay. I call for the will of the committee.
Mr. Chairman, I move to add. Got it already.
All right, I have motion do pass from Senator Tippins on LC 490782. That's Senate Bill 435. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second from Senator Gooch. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have a substitute motion.
You have a substitute motion. What is that motion?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend table Senate Bill 435, LC 490782.
I have a motion to table. I have a second to table. All those in favor of tabling this motion, raise your right hand.
Mr. Chairman, I'll call for the yeas and nays.
Okay, all those, I would rather have the raising hands. That way I can have an accurate, make sure I get an accurate count.
He wants a roll call. You want a roll call?
Oh, a roll call vote.
Okay.
Pretty obvious.
We're not going to have a roll call vote. That's what I think. Raising the hands will be sufficient.
Your discretion.
Mr. That's up to the chair to decide.
That's why I'm saying I think raising, and the chair says the raising the hands will be sufficient. All right. All those in favor of tabling, raise your right hand. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed to tabling, raise your right hand. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The motion fails. Now we have a motion and a second on the floor. We have an amendment to be offered.
Mr. Chairman. Proposing that we strike lines 39 through 43 to address the concerns that I laid out earlier, along as with Robin Hines with Georgia High School Association.
39 through what?
43.
39 through 43.
What would that do, Mr. Chairman?
It would allow females to play up. Biological females at birth, as we've defined in starting on line 26. If you're transgender female, you want to play up, or I may be saying that wrong, but if you're a female at birth, you can play in male sports. Is what my intent.
All right, I have a motion on an amendment. Any second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
I have a second with Senator Jackson. Now discussion. And number 13, lucky 13.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the Legislative Council if the way he is presenting this amendment, would it actually do what he's attempting to do? Because, well.
Yes, removing that language would then leave only the restriction in place for male students playing female sports.
So it would not, okay. So it would only address females being able to, but not males who want to, who are transgender, who want to play sports. So is that correct?
Correct. The bill in its current state basically covers either way. With the amendment, it would only cover one direction. It would prevent males from playing female designated sports.
All right.
Thank you.
And yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, the bill brings up, as has already been noted, very serious equal protection and other constitutional questions at the outset, given Supreme Court precedent in Title IX. My question, though, is on the amendment. That also brings up questions of constitutional issues of treating like situated groups of people differently. And that is also prohibited constitutionally. I'd have to look it up, but I did want to ask Legislative Counsel if he had any thoughts on that. That, again, may be a little more complex than you're ready to delve into right this minute. But I certainly know that these constitutional prohibitions on categorization can be problematic under the Constitution and Supreme Court precedent.
Thank you, Senator. I do appreciate that it is a little more nuanced and complex than I can really address. In the context of transgender students, there's a pending case in our federal circuit right now that the panel of judges made a ruling, and then the entire 11th Circuit vacated that ruling, and they're going to have an in-bank hearing. So the whole world is wondering what the 11th Circuit is going to do regarding transgender students, and it's expected that case would likely go up to the Supreme Court. The Bostock case that was mentioned earlier is an employment-related case. The case that's pending in the 11th Circuit is a school case. It's out of Florida, but it involves transgender students and the use of bathrooms. So we're kind of all waiting to see what the state of the law is going to be. So right now, we would just be looking for more generalized propositions of equity under Title IX.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Number 4. Who's number 4? Senator Dolezal.
I probably should have turned my mic. I was actually going to ask the same question that Senator Parent asked, and I was going to ask it of the author, because he mentioned, I think when Senator Brass brought this up earlier, that was the reason for the inclusion in the bill, was I guess making it apply equally across the board. Is that correct?
Can you please come back up the microphone and have you sit at the other mic? This one doesn't seem to be working, I've been told.
This one's not, this one. When we were working through this, that was one of the things that had been mentioned from last time that we came through, and so that's why that was placed in there. Is that there?
It's on, it's working.
Is it working?
So I certainly, Mr. Chairman, understand Senator Brass's concern. I don't know if there's a way to accomplish his goal in a different manner other than striking that provision. Perhaps it's working between now and the time this gets to the floor to see what the options are with council.
Okay, well, right now I have a motion and a second. Yes, sir.
Due to the concerns the senator from the 42nd brought up, and whatever district you're in, Dolezal, I'll due to their concerns, I'll withdraw the amendment.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second on the underlying bill. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the legislation of, where's that in front of me now? So LC 490782. Please raise your right hand in favor. Raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, okay. I couldn't see shoe. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Senator McNeil. 6. All those opposed, please light sign. 4. The motion passes, and we'll send this on to the Rules Committee. That's the end of our business for today. I thank each of you for coming. I know it was a little long, but we got the business done, and I thank you for being here.